Let's get right to it. Let's start with Kyle Loomis joining us to talk some Auburn football. You can catch Kyle on E2C Network and, of course, right here on a regular basis here at the Voice of College Football. Kyle, how you doing today?
Doing very well. Excited that we actually have legitimate football stuff to talk about. What an SEC Media Days it was.
I was just listening to Hugh Freeze, and what stood out to me was, this being a second year, this is supposed to be a point in which you have your culture in place to a certain extent, and terminology and relationships are built and have been established, and it's supposed to be you're a little bit more comfortable. That comfort level has risen. So I was impressed with him stating that it was an opportunity right after the season for him to meet with players, to kind of sit back, get their suggestions, make it more of a player-led team, and to allow them to grow and develop as leaders to move this football program to the next level.
Yeah, you heard a lot of that early in the press conference for Hugh Freeze about really fine-tooth combing this identity. Chemistry was a word that came up. He talked about with the coaching staff, and he was very quick to say this is not a shot at anybody who has or hasn't been here, anything like that, but he just notes that there is a comfort level that he feels with his staff. But what I found interesting is that he says the players have expressed to him they notice the comfort layer that comes in with Hugh Freeze and the staff right now, with each other, with themselves. And let's be honest, it comes from the fact that Hugh Freeze, as he addressed, has on the offensive side of the ball, I believe with every single one of his assistant coaches, on the field assistant coaches, has coached at some point. So that's a good sign for continuity, chemistry, all these buzzwords that we really like to use. He's also very excited about DJ Durkin and the rest of the staff. Charles Kelly as co-defensive coordinator. You always walk away from SEC Media Days, I feel like, feeling some good vibes. And I try my best to pull the orange and blue glasses off and not just try to paint everything with those color glasses on. But I got a sense of comfort. I got a sense of continuity. I got a sense that we have reasons to be positive about where this program in terms of wins and losses, yes, but where it's heading in terms of culture and chemistry, all those buzzwords we like to use.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's been a minute since Auburn's been on the national stage and has been relevant in national discussions. And Hugh Freeze alluded to that a few times to say it's time that Auburn gets back to being one of the best programs in the country. Obviously, a national championship game appearance in 2013. 17 would have been the last time that late in the season, of course, with those wins over number 1 Alabama and number 1 Georgia, that the national landscape included Auburn. So it's time to get them back.
It is time to get them back. But isn't it interesting, Mark, that all week, even without Auburn being, as you said, relevant to the end of the season picture, the playoff, national championship, all that Auburn is still getting discussed as one of the toughest, in some players' minds, not Auburn players' minds, the toughest place that they have played. We have heard Mississippi State players, Georgia players, Kirby Smart, Georgia coaches said as much. Oklahoma has talked about a little bit how they may not intimidated, but they're just intrigued with what they're hearing about what it's like to play in Jordan-Hare. So you're right. Auburn has not been prominent on the national stage in the results of everything since 2017, pretty much. But they haven't lost a lot of respect. And a lot of that comes from the whole thing we've got going on here. We throw out Auburn family, and of course, I believe it, I bleed it, all that kind of stuff. And I know some of y'all probably listening roll your eyes at that, but it's a real thing, man. So when we talk about, as we got back to a second ago, chemistry, the feel of things, it is time for Auburn to go back to its national place of prominence, but you got to fix at home first. You got to have the home front fixed up, and I think we're heading there.
And from what I remember, right, I heard the Kirby Smart comment, and he somewhat initiated it. It wasn't like one of these throwaway comments like, okay, somebody brought up school blank, fill in the blank, and so I got to say something nice about, the atmosphere and it being a tough place to play. No, he just flat out brought up Auburn as being one of the truly difficult places to play in all of college football. speaking of which, it's an odd schedule. And we've looked at it a few
We have.
times, and I don't know that it really hit me the way it did when Hugh Freeze outlined it. And I thought, because I believe that the Oklahoma media has definitely descended on Dallas. It just seems like every other question has some kind of
Oh yeah.
Oklahoma angle to it. But of course, that's going to be a historic game. Oklahoma visiting the Plains for the very first time.
Mm-hmm.
But these 5 consecutive home games and then not being home the entire month of October.
Yes. Yes. We've been lamenting about this for months now. I mean, it's just been one of those things. You know, you're thankful, right? 5 weekends in a row. If you're going to the games, you get to be in Auburn, the loveliest village on the plains. Who doesn't love that? The caveat is in Alabama in September, it's still summer. It really doesn't stop being summer until probably mid-October. So, not a single game in the month of October for Auburn in Jordan-Hare. We're going to be on the road. So at home for 5, on the road for 3, come back to home for 3, and then you go on the road for your final one. I mean, usually you see one of these in a perfect world, it's home away, home away, home away. And we saw that last year, kind of. But for whatever reason, Auburn's been on this trend with scheduling. I don't know why it's happened this way, where they'll have a humongous just series of games at the beginning of the season at home and then go away for a long time, basically for the whole month of October. This time for real. It's interesting, and I think Oklahoma fans, I don't think that you're going to be missing out on the atmosphere and stuff because we're excited for that game too. But I can imagine that after 5 straight home games in the heat of Alabama, it's people are going to be a little tired at the end of that and ready for a little bit of a break in October.
Kyle, anything else, whether it be from Hugh Freeze or
Yeah.
any of the players that stood out to you that you thought was meaningful?
Yes, I do. I think he talked, obviously, as they tend to do. They get asked about this player, that player, position groups, things like that. Let me run down a couple for you real quick. Obviously, I've talked about it a lot here. The quarterback question, there is no quarterback question, as I've tried to state repeatedly for folks. Coach Hugh Freeze has put it out there again. Peyton Thorne's the starting quarterback, period, done, over with. Spoke very highly of him about where he's heading. Also spoke very openly about what he's got to do better, decision-making. But some of that decision-making improvements, he has to get some assistance on as well by having help from the wide receiver room, the offensive line group. Speaking of which, he spoke very highly of the offensive line and the run game in particular. I felt like in not just the press conference, but some of his commentary on the sidebar, I guess you'd call it, of the SEC network and some of the other interviews that he's done. So I knew that the running back room would be pretty solid, but to hear him openly start expressing that he hopes and he believes that is going to be a strength of this team, that's got to be an encouraging sign. And the final encouraging sign, I would say, for Auburn fans, a lot of people are worried about the depth of the defensive line, especially the interior of the defensive line. He did say that he actually feels in a really good situation about the depth of the interior of the defensive line. What his question is what is the talent level and how good can that talent level rise when you start playing against the talent of SEC? So in terms of bodies to use there that are going to be what you need to go out and compete, it sounds like we got those. So that should not be a worry. We just got to really see what they look like together out there. So some of the concerns that people have out there, whether it's quarterback, offensive line depth, maybe the running game too, a lot of those things were addressed by Coach Hugh Freeze. And I walk away feeling very positive about where we're heading in the beginning of this season.
Kyle Loomis, E2C Network. It's right here on YouTube, and it's everything involving Auburn.
Yes, sir.
It's
The
Auburn football, Auburn athletics, it's culture, it's academics, it's everything from the Auburn family.
Yes, sir. It's what we call the Auburn experience, and we appreciate you guys giving us a look. And of course, Mark, you having us here.
Thank you, Kyle. Have a great day. We'll see you
too.
soon.
War Eagle.